Hey there, Average Joes. Welcome back to the Eternal Struggle. I am your average host, JayMang. Today, once again, I am joined by my taller than average co-host, TallSharkandHandsome. How are you doing today, Shark?
I am great. I just had a what Baltimoreans call a snowball. Back in Syracuse, we called them snow cones, but apparently because it's in a cup instead of a cone, it's called a snowball. It's
Oh,
basically shaved ice with juice in it. I don't know. It was really good.
where I come from, snowballs mean something different.
How about you, Jay? How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. It's Tuesday, ready for the weekend already.
Mm,
Had a very nice weekend in with the family. And
nice.
I am really happy to announce that I hit affiliate this weekend.
Woo! Woo!
Yeah,
So
so
now
I'm
people can subscribe to you, throw $5 bills your way, so you can pick up half of it, and
Yeah, I mean, like the biggest reason that I really wanted to hit affiliate is because I just wanted a bowl cut emote so badly. And so
we
for
need
the
to
low,
get you
low price of one Bezo buck or $5, you too could have a bowl cut emote coming soon, TM.
on.
All right, so tell me about your week in Eternal Shark.
So my week in Eternal, I spent a little bit of time playing around with TJP Pledge, and then I realized, oh, it's almost May. I should probably get to Masters instead of dicking around down here in Gold 3. So I've been spending about the past week going from Gold 3 to Diamond 2 now, maybe Diamond 3 again. I don't know, with Rakano aggro, just trying to jam a whole bunch of games. How about
Oh,
you?
So I hate to say it, but I haven't really been playing a whole lot. In the past week, the week before I was playing quite a bit because I was streaming a lot of Eternal. But I fell asleep really early on Friday, like 7:30 p.m. early, and I was going to stream that night, but I was also going to play Magic, so I guess it didn't really like help Eternal either way. I was borrowing some Magic Online cards, but I haven't been playing much. I really need to have a playtest group for these ECQs to hold me accountable because I told myself that I would go really hard at this ECQ, and I still don't really know what the fuck I'm playing this weekend.
Yeah, dude. I mean, anytime you want to play test against me, as long as I'm not at work, I'm happy to do so. I'm sure that I can find some other people to help you out too. At least in my Discord, there will probably be people. I know Rock said he's in, but
Yeah, I know.
that's
I know there's people around, but like, I really need like a group that's going to hold me accountable. And be like, hey, are you getting on tonight? The problem is like when one of my friends hit me up to play something like Counter Strike or something like that, and I haven't played with them in a while. I'll probably go play Counter Strike. I don't know.
that's true.
I'll try harder next time. I'm really hoping that the ECQs stick around after Worlds, like they continue to do some sort of organized play inside the client at least. Because
That'd be
like
awesome.
as cool as the ETS is, I tend to enjoy the ECQs a little more.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
All right, guys. So let's go over this week's topics. So the first topic is we're going to briefly talk about the SPG 11th Hour Open and the top 8 and just kind of give you an idea of like what the metagame looked like there. And then we're going to talk about the new mechanic that was spoiled today, which is Twist. And then from there, we are going to talk about determining the effectiveness of cards and decks, which was a topic suggested by, I believe, your brother, right? Gizmosis Joe?
Exactly. Yep.
Yes. And then the last topic, assuming time permitting, because who knows how long that's going to take, we're going to talk about auto includes, quote unquote, of each faction and whether or not maybe some of them, if we feel like they could use some adjustments, but we'll get there. And then we'll finish off with our brew of the week and brewskis, and then talk about our content creator of the week.
Awesome. Let's hop right into it.
All right. So our first topic tonight is the SPG 11th Hour Open that was ran on Saturday. I'm assuming this was because they wanted to supplement the fact that ETS wasn't this past weekend and people wanted something to do.
For
Um,
sure.
so I think it's really nice that the guys over at SPG organized something for people. This was won by SMJ 1360 on Horu Control.
Yes. I love that deck. Have you played that deck at all?
No, so this is actually a deck that I would like to, if as long as I can find time to, I want to try it out a little bit like tomorrow, maybe tonight if I find some time, because this is definitely on my list of like decks that I feel like may be pretty well positioned for the ECQ. I mean, it's already shown that it is tier 1 for the last few weeks, and it takes advantage of the knife, which let's be honest, that card's broken as fuck. We've said it multiple times here before. That card may get nerfed eventually.
And I remember when this, like right after the Homecoming came out, I remember watching these guys. I forget what tournament was going on. I think it was one of like the LSV tournaments, like the actual the tournaments. But somebody like marketed for Scourge on turn 3, Scourge of Frostholm, and like just foresaw playing that card forever ago, and then played it, and it was super like impactful, and just like that kind of like forethought is so cool to me, and I think that this deck really allows you to do that kind of thing.
So in second place was Praxis Pledge, which I actually think is a good portion as to why Horu Control is so well positioned right now, because from what I'm understanding from hearing through the grapevine, people like Sunny is a pretty much a fourth runner of the deck. The deck does not handle Hailstorm very well, and Horu Control being a Hailstorm and Harsh Rule deck, like, seems like it's pretty well positioned. But I'll tell you what, that Praxis Pledge deck, the little bit that I've seen it played, that deck is fucking scary and consistent.
Yeah, man, this deck is very consistent. Pretty much everything is a 4 of, except for Glasshopper, which the fourth one is at the top end actually as an Apex Predator. The last Glasshopper is actually in the market, but of the cards in the deck, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different play sets of units, and only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those 11 die to Hailstorm. So like half of the units that they play die to Hailstorm. Hailstorm's a very good card against this deck. However, it doesn't do a whole lot once they get those 4 toughness and 5 and 6 toughness units out. So
yeah, well, that's where your harsh rules come in, right?
Exactly.
So in third and fourth place, we saw Stone Scar and Genève. So it's a pretty normal Genève deck, and I believe this was Stone Scar mid aggro, kind of like in between there. I know that it is Paradox list, right?
Yeah, it's Paradox's Stone Scar, piloted by Child Roland, phenomenal player. Yeah, it's using the new Treachery a little bit. It's got 2 of those. It's actually got Jek Hunted Fugitive, the original Jek, as the top end at 5.
Dude, that card is getting replaced so fast in the next set. I can tell by that fucking dragon. I can tell you right now.
Yeah, I mean the dragon doesn't have 7 attack, but the dragon, this Jek also doesn't have a haste or charge. So
yeah. For sure. So then the last 4 decks that were in the top 8 were there were 2 more FTP two more Genève decks, and then another Praxis Pledge, and then Yetis. Yetis was Allison.
Yes, Allison had the Yetis, and I also want to give a shout out to Urikyu. He was tied for 5th, 5th through 8th or whatever. They all have the same ranking, but Urikyu has been at literally every tournament that I've ever seen anyone be playing, and they're just always there, always having a good time, always playing. Even on the casual Fridays, I don't think I've seen them miss one yet. So yeah, good on you, Urikyu.
Sometimes I wish I had that kind of time, but yeah. Okay, Sarah. So anyways, so let's move on to our next topic. So the next topic is we want to quickly talk about the new mechanic Twist that was revealed today.
Twist. So Twist is a repeatable effect on units. It basically is an activated ability if you've ever played Magic. So you pay a cost, and then the unit gets +1/-1 permanently, and then you do whatever the effect is on the card. So for example, for the first card that they spoiled, it was a 4-cost unit, 1 shadow influence requirement. It's a 2/4 dire beast called Razor Quill, and it had the ability is pay 1 and twist Razor Quill. That's the phrasing that they're using, I guess, to deal 1 damage to the enemy player and gain 1 health. So it's interesting because it goes from a 2/4 to a 3/3. To a 4/2 if you keep twisting and twisting and twisting. You can do it as many times as you can pay for in 1 turn if you want to. You can spread it out over other turns.
They couldn't have worded this any fucking differently. Like, this is the dumbest wording I've ever fucking seen.
I like the idea. It's a repeatable ultimate, but I think the name of it is so stupid. Honestly, just like tweak the nipples, and this will deal 1 damage to your opponent and gain you 1 life. It's just
all right. So for all you gimps out there, you'll be pretty happy.
God damn it, Jay.
Let's talk about the second card that they showed in that article, which is Bulbous Humbug. It's a 1/2/3 costing time unit with flying that says pay 2 and twist Bulbous Humbug to draw a sigil of your choice from your nipples. I mean deck.
Anything bulbous that you twist is gonna raise some eyebrows, but this Bulbous Humbug does actually seem relatively decent. It draws you a sigil. It becomes a 2/1 flying. It's fixing because you get to choose the sigil. The only problem is you have to pay 5 total power to do it. I think it'll be pretty good in draft, where you want those flying units and you want the power fixing, the influence fixing. I think it's pretty powerful in draft. I don't know if it's going to see a whole lot of play in constructed.
No, I don't think so. But this is definitely the kind of fixing that you want in draft. So I think it's a pretty neat like pickup in time.
Yeah, I think the next card, however, is going to see a whole bunch of play in aggressive green decks.
Interesting. So why don't you tell us about it?
All right. So this card is called Headhunter. It is a 1-drop 2/1 gunslinger minotaur. So not only is it a minotaur, it is also a gunslinger. I know I just said that, but it has the ability pay 2 and twist Headhunter's nipples to play a wanted poster on an enemy unit. So basically, it's a 1-drop 2/1, which Oni Ronin. What's that Yeti that costs 2? The Snow
Crush Yeti.
Snow Crush Yeti. Yeah. So it's on par with that. And when the 2/1 is no longer useful, you just sacrifice it and put an enemy unit on a poster, or a wanted poster on an enemy unit.
You just twist his nipples clean off.
You just twist them clean off. God damn it.
You slap them on there. They know that it's wanted, and then you get to draw 2 cards after you tear up whatever the nipples are on.
Yeah, you get to draw 1 card per nipple. I think this card is actually phenomenal in constructed, and I think it's going to be pretty great in draft as well.
Interesting.
I really like the.
It is a gunslinger. I don't know how relevant that is, but it is a gunslinger and a minotaur, which are 2 different tribes that have seen some amount of play at some point. So it's kind of interesting to think that you can technically get a wanted poster off of a Tavrod. Not that, I mean, honestly, that's probably not what you want to be doing. But still, like it's a minotaur, it's a gunslinger, and those are 2 very relevant unit types.
I could totally see an Argenport aggro deck with the top end being Tavrod and the bottom end, the low end being this gunslinger, and
I mean, at least it's a hit.
For sure, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move to the last one that they revealed today. And this one is kind of exciting, but I don't know necessarily how good it is. We'll have to see what the brewers do. This is Larai, the Appraiser. It is a 0/6 primal 3-drop explorer. This is a legendary and it says the enemy player cannot attack with relic weapons or activate relics. And then you pay 3 to twist her nipples and draw a relic of your deck. From your deck with cost equal to her toughness or life or whatever. So this seems like a very interesting card for various, I guess like maybe armory or I don't know if it would fit that well into rats, but it does present some interesting ideas for relic style decks. Now rats I think are in a pretty good position with already how it's set up, but like it does seem like an interesting card. Whether or not it's good, I don't know.
I think this card is actually really cool. This is the first time that that top ability has been printed so far. It says the enemy player can't attack with relic weapons or activate relics. We've seen abilities where they can't play them. We've never seen it where they can't attack with those relics.
So that is an interesting point. So if you really think about it, with a card like this in play, so this could present some tempo ideals. If we see let's say we have a meta that's very full of hammers or those types of relic weapons.
Dawners, sort of the Sky King.
Yeah, and or any relics that are like very powerful when they're like, say, Chalice ever came back into play. And then as long as you keep up counter magic or something like that to deal with like harsh rules or like spot removal. I don't know. I think it's an interesting thought, but I don't know if it's actually good. So
I don't know. It's definitely interesting. I feel like it might be a little too cute.
Yeah, cute
But the fact
is a
that you
good
get to go, but the fact that you get to go pick a relic from your deck, you kind of want to have one of each cost from like 5 on down, just to make her usable. It feels a little bit like a very slow, relatively bad birthing pod.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that it has to be equal to her health. So that makes it very awkward. If it was equal to or less than, then this card would be like, I don't even know if it was equal to or less than, if this card would still even be playable. And I actually literally thought that that's what this card did. And I just realized that it was cost equal to her health. So I take back everything I said. This card is fucking garbage. Don't play it.
I don't know if it's that bad, but the 3 cost for it, in addition to the paying 3 to twist her nipples, is pretty difficult. If you have to pay to twist her nipples, there's something going. There's something.
Hey, some people say some people prefer to pay. It's a lot easier. They don't have to work for it. So one last thing I want to mention before we move on. I don't know if this is the first time, but for those who are watching on YouTube right now, but this card frame. It's a legendary card, but if you look on the left side, the little like white thing, the white horn, is broken. Is that the first time we've ever seen that card frame before?
No, that's literally how it's always been.
I thought the horns were on both sides.
Nope, I'm about to blow your goddamn mind. Pull up any other card. Just like go look at any other card.
So that's literally been on every other card, you say.
Mm-hmm. And I only know this because I relatively recently tried to pull out like the border in Photoshop and
Wow, I'm an idiot. You're right.
It's all right. It's all right.
Okay. So let's go ahead and transition into our third topic, which is determining the effectiveness of cards and decks. This was suggested by your brother Gizmosis Joe. And I thought that we would discuss a little bit and give some examples on, for instance, when I think about trying cards and decks, I'm not much of a deck brewer, but I will tweak decks occasionally to my play style. And my very, very first step whenever I'm thinking about testing a card and a deck is I try to do some thought exercises and use logic to determine whether or not this card would work well in let's say general situations. So I usually try to think about what the best case and worst case scenarios are with certain cards. So I think the easiest example that I can give right now is Annihilate is a conditional removal spell that's very good. We all know that Annihilate's good when it's good, but also bad when it's bad. So I think about, does Annihilate deal with problem units that are in the current meta? So if the current meta is 75% multi-factional units, then Annihilate's probably not going to be very good. Now, then you consider, is it good against units that hose me, like my deck? So let's say my deck gets hosed by Rezon. I'm probably not going to want to play Annihilate, but if my deck gets hosed by Vara, then I may want to play some number of Annihilate in my deck. Is it a broad enough answer to warrant some copies in the deck? Usually, like with Annihilate in any given meta, I don't normally, and most people don't normally play all four. You'll play like two or something. So like that's like that kind of thought process I think is really important first step to whenever you're thinking about just insert any card there and think about those things.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with Annihilate in particular. When I first started playing Eternal, I had a really hard time thinking about the meta. And I know that my brother in particular also had a hard time, thinking about the meta because he didn't play as often as I did. But so even if you don't know if the card is going to be great in the current meta, think about your second point definitely makes sense. Think about the cards that are good against your deck, and you want to be able to deal with those units. For Vara is the greatest example. Sandstorm Titan is another great example. Those both get hit by Annihilate. But if you find yourself you keep getting shut out by, I don't know, Svetya or, another like Ikaria, the original Ikaria, you may want to play something else.
But yeah, so like those kind of thought exercises, like with any, like just insert any card there. Like some cards are a lot easier to go through that type of thought exercise. Like for instance, what is it? What are the 3 faction spells called again?
Not the
display.
Charms, but the displays.
So the display, like a lot of the displays, like for instance, display of what is Instinct is Genève, right? Whichever the Genève is.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. So the Genève one, God, we're such great podcasters.
Professional game players over here.
The Genève one is pretty easy to look at and be like, this applies to a lot of situations. Like this is like you can pretty much skip right to the next phase. But like the Corendon one, for instance, you look at and you can be like, does this really fit in my deck? Does my deck want ramp? Do I need -1/-1 effects for the board? So like those types of and then you can first apply your logic and then move to the next step, which would be the actual testing. You want to test the card.
And just to add one more point, if you have a slot in your deck that you're using for like removal spells, like a 2-cost, 1-cost, 2-cost removal spell like Annihilate or Suffocate or Desecrate or whatever other cards fit into your deck, maybe play 1 or 2 of each of those cards and see which ones do the best for you. And then that will come with part 2, which is testing.
Yes, for sure. So testing, I mean, I think everybody knows what testing is, but so while you're doing your testing, whether you choose to do it with friends or you choose to do it just on ladder, when occasions arise where your card comes into play, so you have your card in your hand, any point that you have your card in your hand, you want to take notes, whether it's physical or mental, on how much that card has affected the board state or your situation. So you have
whether or not that situation is normal too. So because sometimes you'll be testing in casual and you'll be playing against some knucklebones deck and whoops, they happen to draw some crazy draft bomb that just, it goes right between your defenses that you didn't plan for because nobody ever plays that card. But
yeah, you definitely have to you have to consider whether or not the situations that you're in is a very normal situation. So for instance, if you run into a situation where your opponent has drawn a 1 or 2 of in their deck, you have to think about like how often is shit like that going to happen, and if that's the only time that the card is good, then maybe the card isn't good for your deck. Like the real issue with testing is that like, and I am 100% guilty of this, is that the first time you draw this card and you have this card in hand, and whether it's good or bad, you're just like, fuck, this card is god awful because it wasn't good in that situation. But like maybe it's good like 75% of the time, but just because it was bad that first time, you're just like, this is fucking awful, I'm taking it out of my deck. Like you have to give the card a certain amount of data points. Like you can't just like come to conclusions very quickly.
Yeah, you want to give it an actual shot. Like the more data points that you can give a specific card, the more thoroughly tested it will be. For example, you don't want to play 3 games and say, "Oh, I didn't draw a torch once. Let's take it out of the deck." That's not correct.
Yeah.
You want to, I would say at minimum 10 games before you even decide to make a change to the deck at all.
Yes, 100% agree. Friend to TallSharkandHandsome and Coheed and Cambria hater Bryant Cook, who is a well-known legacy Magic the Gathering player, he keeps notes on literally everything. Like, his spreadsheets are really intimidating to look at. I'm not saying you have to do that. You do not have to do that. Everybody tests their own way, as long as you keep in mind that you have to think about general situations. You can't think about your corner cases. You can't think about, oh, this card is only, or this card was bad 2 times in a row, so it must be bad all the time. You have to really think about how often that card is good. And you can't just like base it off of what your opponent draws. You have to think about what your opponent could have rather than what they did have.
And if you are going to be taking actual notes, like whether on a spreadsheet or in like on actual paper, you want to make mention of what deck you're facing, because you can play against Torch in an aggro deck, in a control deck, in any sort of deck that runs red, because it's a pretty great card. And it'll work different. It may work against your deck the same every time, but if your deck is aggressive, when that control deck plays Torch, that might have been the nail in the coffin, and you'd be like, well, my deck is terrible, I'm going to switch it all up. But if you're playing against another aggressive deck, they don't have as many removal spells as a control deck does, so it might, I don't know.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
And yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. And then one last point I want to make right there is you also have to consider like whether or not you're playing this card optimally. Like, if you're not playing the card optimally and you're getting punished for it, it's possible that it's not the card choice, it's just how you're playing the card. That's getting pretty deep at that point, and sometimes simplifying your choices is a good thing depending on what level that you play at. If you play the game all the time, like let's say someone like Tony G, then you're going to play your cards a lot more differently than me, a person who, yes, I have experience with card games, but I probably only play 5 to 6 hours of Eternal a week nowadays versus when I used to play like 20 to 30. Test with players that you know, because you guys can talk and determine whether or not that card is good in a certain matchup and a given matchup if you're playing that card correctly.
Yeah, and it lets you can hop into like a Discord channel and have multiple people watching you, like one person watching your opponent, one person watching you, or maybe you're streaming it or whatever. You can even just hop into a personal Discord call like Jay and I are in right now.
Yeah, groupthink.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be able to talk through your decisions. You could do it where it's you and whoever's watching you are in one group, and the other person, whoever's watching them, is in a different group, or vice versa. Even, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do it. You could also just go on casual if you don't have that many eternal playing friends, and try it that way too.
Yeah. Talk with your friends and people that you trust their opinions. When you share your card choices, make sure that you explain what your thought process is with these cards. It's more so important when you're playing very rogue type cards, less so when you're just like, oh, I chose to play 3 copies of Annihilate versus 2 copies of Annihilate because right now cards like Hojin and Vara are really popular, and those 2 cards hose my deck. Blitz.
Yeah. I am lucky enough to be on a team where I can just, say, hey, I'm playing this deck. I'm having trouble against this deck. What cards can I change out of my current list? Like, what would you guys recommend? And, I can get all sorts of different information from, batteries, mail, The Rock, just a whole slew of people on my team, because my team is relatively large. But if you don't have that, feel free to throw it up in my Discord channel. Throw it up in Bassoon Buffoon's Discord channel. Enraush's. Enraush is a super great example. He's willing to help anybody out if they ask him a question. Same with Grimfan.
Yes, for sure. They're always very willing to give their opinion, and that comes to the very last point: is take constructive criticism in stride. Don't take it personally when people may tell you, I think that's a poor choice. I think this is a poor card. I think this is a poor combination of cards, because whether or not they're right or wrong, deep down, most players are just trying to help you out.
For sure. I mean, there are some outliers who are always going to be naysaying about everything, and you should copy and paste the this exact list. But for the most part, if you ask somebody, any kind of a streamer or anything, they'll probably try to point you in the right direction.
Yeah. And as always, just keep testing. Just keep trying things. Don't change things super quick. Don't play like 3 games and be like, this card is terrible. Just keep testing. All right. Let's move on to the next topic. So for the 4th topic tonight, we want to talk about auto includes, quote unquote, of each faction and whether or not we feel like they need adjustments. This was a suggestion from one of our more frequent commenters on Reddit, Late Night Cartoons. And I want to mention real quick that we are ignoring merchants and smugglers. Well, we're not going into multi-faction anyways, but like we're ignoring merchants because merchants are a pretty obvious like quote unquote auto include when you're thinking of like single faction cards. So we're going to move straight on from there and go right into fire. Why don't you tell me about the auto includes in fire?
All right. So there are 2 cards basically that fit into pretty much any fire deck. I've talked about one of them earlier in the stream, the podcast here, and it's Torch. It is a necessary card for whatever faction you're in. It's one of the first cards that you get from playing the game. It is a 1-cost 3 damage spell. It hits anything and it kills a lot of units. It's good in aggressive decks. It's good in control decks.
Doesn't hit sites.
It does not hit sites, which is important. Which is one way of balancing that already absolutely busted card. And it serves as a way to stop aggressive decks on turn 1 or turn 2 if you need to, if you're in a red deck that's multicolored like FJS. It just fits in every archetype, and it's very cheap. It's got great value. If you're not playing this and you're in a fire deck, I think you may be making a mistake.
Yeah, because of Torch existing, it allows cards like Teacher of Humility, Haunted Highwayman, and Bandit Queen to exist in the format. And Hojin, yeah. So without Torch, I see a lot of people complain about Torch existing. Without Torch existing, there would be a whole slew of aggressive creatures. Like, I know that people are like, but you get to play it in aggressive decks too. That's fine. If you're playing mid-range, your creatures are outpacing Torch anyways.
Yeah, and I know that I can sometimes on stream, I'll get pretty salty, be like, this person's had their 3rd Torch. But no, actually, I've just played against 3 decks that have red in a row, and they all happen to have Torch because they're playing it correctly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that card definitely goes in pretty much any red deck. The only exception that I can think is if you happen to be playing Invoke the Waystones, or giving the what's that new Diogo who gives the top card of the top spell of your deck. If it's like a combo, very, very seldomly is it correct to not be.
Yeah,
card.
I do want to say real quick, just because we say auto include doesn't mean every single deck will be playing these cards, but they're very, very prevalent. Anyways, go ahead and take us to our second fire card.
Second fire card is great in the market, not necessarily in main deck. It's called Boar. Because this card, so Boar is a 1-cost unit, 1-cost spell. Destroy target attachment, and then create a copy of Boar, and then discard this at the end of your turn. So it allows you to rapid fire machine gun kill any number of attachments or relics, and then you can market it back to your market if you want to. It makes it so that insane relics like chains, Martyr's Chains, and Pit of Lenecta, and Temporal Distortion can all exist, but it also makes it so that there's an easy answer to them.
Yep.
Is it
inelegant? It allows very powerful relics to exist, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I used to really hate the card It's actually at an all-time low in the meta right now. So like mostly because a lot of the fire decks just aren't getting played or playing fire markets. So I mean, it's really easy to say right now that it doesn't seem like it's too prevalent or much of a problem. But when boar is prevalent in the meta, do we feel like it's just too powerful?
I I think it is, to put it nicely, an inelegant solution to a. It's a very. There are not very many solutions, I will say, that are as good as boar. Like there's no reason to play any other relic removal spell because boar kills them all for 1 power each. You know,
Yeah,
I just wish that there was other options, and maybe that boar wasn't so oppressively good against it. But
yeah. I,
you
I
know,
I know that like a lot of the times people would throw around like maybe increasing the cost one for every time you cast it. I think it's fine where it is right now. I don't want to spend too much time on boar. Everybody knows
sure.
it's good.
All right. How
So
about you tell us about time cards?
all right, so time, the first one should be no surprise Sandstorm Titan, which has been a staple to the game since the game's inception. It's a very pushed body at a 4 drop, being a 5/6 with endurance that prevents things from flying. It serves, because it does that, it serves as a check for the flying strategies, and typically just about any 4 drop that's ever made in this game is compared to Sandstorm Titan. I mean, how can you not? It's such a very large body when you're thinking about 3 drops and then comparing them to Sandstorm Titan at 4 for that one extra power. You just get so much more. Um, so I used to think that this needed adjustments, but removal in Eternal is just very, very good, and there's really no reason to change Sandstorm Titan. It's a fine card in the meta currently. It still sees play, but it's not oppressive.
And it has a double faction influence, which sometimes can make it actually cost 5, even though
Yeah,
that's less of a
yeah.
problem.
If you're spreading your faction base, then yeah, sometimes it can be a little bit harder to cast. So that is more for like the mid range slash like slower decks. So maybe like aggro mid range, but like the other time card that I wanted to bring up, which has been a staple in the game since set 4. I believe it was set 4 that this was introduced. Is
Yep.
Teacher of Humility, which is more of an aggressive time card. It's also a very pushed card where it a 2 cost 3/3 that has a very powerful effect where when you hit your opponent, like they get a relic, a cursed relic that makes everything they draw other than the first card they draw in their turn um cost 3 more was the original version, and now it's been nerfed to 2. Still a very powerful effect, but when it was 3 it was extremely rough. And it's a card that's kept in check by early game removal, such as Torch and some other another card that we'll mention later on when we get to Justice.
Don't forget, Teacher of Humility's the relic that it creates also makes both of you draw a card.
Oh yeah, that's true. It also makes both of you draw. It's just it does a lot of things for a 2 drop, but it also has a steep faction requirement. It does cost you time.
Yeah, you have to have 2 time by turn 2 if you want to play it on curve. It also it dies to Torch, it dies to Annihilate. It is well placed in the curve for what it does.
Yeah, it's a torch soaker. It'll take the torch right out of your opponent's hand. It's crazy.
Yeah. So I'm gonna fly through the primal ones. I don't want to spend too much time on this. We've already been recording for a little while, and we still got a little bit more to go. So the primal cards that are pretty much auto includes are Permafrost, Hailstorm, and Dusk Raider. Permafrost recently has fallen out of favor because of Karoviat Palace, which makes all of your big dudes have endurance. Not to mention the rise of Sandstorm Titan and what's
Moonstone Vanguard.
yes, thank you, Moonstone Vanguard. That's exactly the card I was thinking of. It is super cheap interaction, and it only gets blanked by endurance, so it's a 1 cost stop your opponent's unit. It doesn't kill the unit, so if they have, the Statuary Maiden, it'll still have the ability, but if they're using that card to block with, you can still get damage through. It's been a staple since the beginning of the game. It's great both in aggressive and control decks because it's very cheap.
Yep. It was a staple in Skycrag aggro.
Exactly. And then there's Hailstorm, which is great in control decks. Control decks will almost always play this card. It's the premier early game board wipe. It kills half of it kills most of the aggressive cards that you'll see, kills half of the mid-range cards that you'll see, and it shifts widely whether or not it's used or not in the metagame, depending on what decks are popular. And Hailstorm, for those of you who don't know and have been living under a rock, it costs 3 double primal, deal 3 damage to all units. Then the last card that I think is a pretty auto include. Sometimes it's probably a little bit less than auto include for most decks, but this is Dusk Raider. It is a very good aggressive enabler. It's a 2 cost for 2, 2/2 for 2, 1 primal influence requirement. When it comes into play, Nightfall triggers, and it has Inspire, so every unit that you draw after that has Berserk, which means that it can attack twice once.
Yeah. So all 3 of those tend to coexist in some decks. So like Permafrost tends to coexist with both of those cards, but Hailstorm and Dusk Raider being on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, Permafrost can go with Hailstorm. Permafrost can go with Dusk Raider. Hailstorm and Dusk Raider don't usually go together.
Yeah, not very often. It's very rare.
Yeah. So tell us about the shadow cards.
All right, so we chose 2 shadow cards that are auto includes. The first one seems pretty obvious. So when Into Shadow came out, Vara Vengeance Seeker was introduced to the game, and this card warped the entire format. It just does very powerful things. This is the what I would probably consider the first 4-drop that really gave Sandstorm Titan a run for its money as far as like impactful 4-drops in the game.
This is the Shadow Sandstorm Titan.
Yes, exactly. It does so many different things. It fits in just about any Shadow deck, except for maybe certain builds of decks with Shadow that want to use Aegis, because it just removes Aegis from everything. It grows if they decide to not sacrifice a unit to or can't. It makes them sacrifice a unit if it comes down and they don't want it to grow.
I think the coolest interaction with that ability is Vargo, because Vargo can only be killed by direct damage or combat. You can't sacrifice him to Vara. So if you play Vara against Vargo, you cannot sacrifice Vargo to it.
That's pretty. Yeah, I always thought that was really interesting that you literally can't sacrifice it no matter what. So whether or not it needs adjustments, I would have said yes at one point, but now it just doesn't see a whole lot of play nowadays. It's not like. I think the problem is that for the card is that a lot of the cards around it have been nerfed pretty hard. So it's just, they're not there to support the card, even though as powerful it is as it is. So I don't really think it needs adjustments. It is unfortunate that it tends to suppress some strategies by being such a pushed, life-stealing, growing, deadly, it does a lot of things. At one point it suppressed all of the Aegis strategies, which isn't really a bad thing per se. But now, one of the most popular decks in the format, Horu, is based off of Aegis, and we still don't see Vara.
Yeah, I think Vara fills a similar niche, though a little bit more widespread than Hailstorm. Because they both are great in a very particular meta, but that meta shifts sometimes. And so Vara may not be great 100% of the time. Hailstorm is not great 100% of the time.
Yeah. So the next one is actually the newest card on this list. One of the newest cards. No, it is the newest card. Sorry. The newest card on this list is Desecrate. I think mostly because this card hasn't really seen its full potential yet, but this is it's such a great removal spell with very little downside. The worst part about it is that you require 2 Shadow. Usually paying 3 life is not a very big deal, but it's an unconditional 2-drop removal spell. And I believe that this could be a staple of the meta once the meta starts to shift towards shadow decks. It just so happens that the set that this came out with, Palace was also in it, and just kind of seemed to have pushed the shadow decks out.
Yeah, I think that this slot actually goes to desecrate, annihilate, and suffocate all the 8 removal spells. If you get my grip, because they all are very cheap. They are all you want to play some number of each of those if you're playing Shadow, pretty much.
All right, so why don't you take us into Justice so that we can move on to the Brew of the Week?
Cool. All right, so there are 3 cards for Justice. One of them is pretty obvious. It's Harsh Rule. It's the premier board wipe. It's been present in the meta since set 1. It's a great control card and a high mid-range card. The real drawback is that it costs double Justice, and you have to wait until turn 5 to use it. But it's still a phenomenal card. The second card on our list is Defiance from Fall of Argenport. It is early game interaction, which in Justice is relatively rare. You know, the only other like 1-drop removal, the only other 1-drop spell that can even act as removal is probably going to be Finest Hour, and that's way different than Defiance.
Yeah,
you don't want to play Finest Hour in temporal control, right?
for sure.
And then the third card that is a pretty much an auto include in any aggressive deck is Hojin. It serves 2 purposes. It is a very aggressive card, and it has lifesteal half of the time, more than half of the time. It's a life total patter, so that if you're playing against another aggressive deck who doesn't happen to have lifesteal, you'll kind of win that battle. If you're both just hitting each other in the face as hard as you can each turn without any plan for blocking, Hojin will win that game because he'll gain you some life.
Is it too good?
Yeah. Jinx. I mean, it does sometimes. When we were planning our Blitz deck, Hojin was a huge problem because our deck tries to kill you exactly, and every life point matters. Sometimes you get overkill, but a lot of the times Hojin would just like, oh, hey, look, I'm at 4 at the end of this game, and I win because I have Hojin. But,
so this is a card that I still would like to see adjustments, because it just, man, it does so much. Like, you have to answer it. Like, it has to be answered.
To be fair, it was put in a lot of our Blitz decks.
Yeah, only because we had to combat the other. Like, so I actually stopped playing Blitz when this card came out because I think that this card pretty much single-handedly killed the deck. Like, Varo was bad enough as is, but Hojin is it's so hard to play the race game against a deck that's gaining life after on turn 3 plus.
Yeah. Yep. And who knows? Maybe it requires a little bit of attention. Maybe not. Maybe it just isn't meant to be. Because a lot of people think that's kind of cheap, but I know you and I love it.
Yeah. So let's move on. If you guys have any ideas as far as like cards that we may have missed, I know there's a few in there. I know there's a few like marquee cards that we didn't mention. Go ahead and discuss with us about it in Shark's Discord down below.
Yeah. Tell us how stupid we are. And which cards we missed.
All right, so let's move on to just your average brew of the week. So the deck list that we chose this week is TJP Pledge by Drunken Moose.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've seen Sunnyvale talking a lot about Praxis Pledge, which is pretty popular right now. Though I've been getting my ass handed to me by TJP Pledge, and this deck is super fun. It uses Glasshopper to great effect. It uses Hojin, Imperial Loyalist to a lesser extent, but Ania as well. Moonstone Vanguard is super problematic for aggressive decks. Silverwing Courier, the one that gets invulnerable if you pledged. And just Bearguard Bayonet, giving your big heavy dudes overwhelm and getting an extra power to ramp into that Moonstone Vanguard. It's just so much fun. If you get to pledge on turn 1, it is phenomenal. If you don't, the deck could be a little lackluster. But
I think pretty much it's accepted that any pledge deck you have to mulligan to your pledge. Like you have to pledge, otherwise your glasshoppers and your bayonets become worthless poopy sacks, and your Silverwing Courier is just like a really garbage fucking 5-drop.
That's true. Yeah, the deck is super fun. Jay's going to post a link to it if I prod him enough. And give it a look. If you have the cards for it, try it out. If not, then
yeah, I know it was a deck that was brewed like right after the campaign dropped, and I know that Silverwing Courier is really good against Praxis Pledge. So who knows? Maybe it'll see a little bit of a resurgence this weekend, because Praxis Pledge is going to be present in droves. There's gonna be a lot of them. So my brewski of the week this week is the exact same brewski that I had last week, because it's so fucking good. It's Mad Tree Citra High again.
All right, what is that? Is that a
it's an
IPA?
Imperial IPA, so it's a double IPA, and it has some like really powerful citrus notes to it, and holy fuck, it's so good. I need to go out and buy more.
I don't know if you guys know this, but the I in IPA stands for Imperial, so it is an Imperial Pale Ale. My brewski of the week is Saranac, that company from a few weeks ago. Same company, but a different beer. This is called Kolsch. It's a German style ale. I like it. It's pretty light, only 5% alcohol. It's a pretty casual beer, but I like the Saranac different flavors a lot.
I do want to mention a quick correction for Shark. The I in IPA actually stands for India.
Oh, I'm an idiot.
Imperial India Pale Ale.
Imperial India Pale Ale. It's a double IPA.
So that makes me, I'll have to look into it, but I don't know what a triple fucking IPA is.
It's 3 I's.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
It's incredibly
Imperial India Pale Ale.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to the fucking content creator of the week. So this week I chose the Manted Man.
The Manted Man himself.
Yes, the lore master, the man of mystery. Trail Stories is fucking sick. Mr. Manted Man. And guess who he had on Trail Stories this past week?
Who was it?
I don't know. Somebody that fucking has a huge bowl cut. His name is TallSharkandHandsome.
That's right. Yes. So Manted Man, actually, he's apparently been trying to get a hold of me for like months. But when I first signed up for Discord, I did it from my wrong email address. So I signed up for my right email address, and that other account still exists somewhere. And he tried to add that person as a friend. And he's just like, Shark, why are you ignoring me? So it took both of us being in the same chat room, like at one point, for him to be like, what are you doing, Shark? Why don't you like me?
That's great. I read your article and it was really good.
Cool.
I really like the part where you mentioned me.
Yeah, that's true. I had a lot of fun doing it. It was super good. You know, we did a Discord conversation and, you know, kind of did an interview that way. And it was really fun. So yeah, give that a read if you're interested. It just gives my whole backstory, talks about my feelings and thoughts that you may not have found from our podcast. But yeah, Jay'll probably not include a link to that because I don't prod him enough to put links in.
I always forget. But that is at teamrankstar.com/articles. And then in there, you'll find his Trail Stories with TallSharkandHandsome. I know that he does other content, and he also does the Unexpected Results podcast with likely a future shout out. Drawing a blank right now.
What's his name? What is it?
Wow, we are the best at this. I should have fucking wrote down his name. I feel so fucking bad right now.
Googling it. Unexpected Results. Platypus King.
That's who I was thinking of. I feel so fucking bad right now.
I mean, don't feel bad. I don't listen to podcasts. I don't even listen to our podcast. I don't.
I stopped. So real talk, real quick before we go into our sign off. I used to listen to our podcast like after I post them, like at work. But I don't think I've listened to the last 2 or 3 because I finally got to the point where I'm comfortable with our sound levels and everything. Cause like for a really long time, I was like, I got to make sure that the sound levels are okay. I got to learn, like, got to get better at this. And now I'm just like, I don't fucking care anymore. I'm going to listen to this true crime podcast.
Our viewers get to fucking suffer.
They'll let us
don't care
know
about us anymore.
They'll let us know. They'll let us know whenever it sounds like shit, and then I'll fix it.
That's true. All right. Well,
all right, let's sign off. So if you guys have any questions or topic suggestions, I cannot ask enough. Like, give us more topic suggestions. We really enjoy talking about this stuff. Leave a comment in the Reddit thread or come over and join us on Sharks Discord and talk with us and let us know there.
You got questions, we've got answers.
For sure.
Slogan for some company. I don't know.
Yes, it's a slogan for something that I can't remember right now. I may remember by the end of the podcast. So where can they find you, Shark?
So you guys can find me. The best place to find me is on Discord. It's Radio Shack. You've got questions, we've got answers.
Yeah.
Anyway, Discord is the best place where you can find me. Jay will forget to post a link below, but that's where you can find me between podcasts, between streams. I'm always on Discord. You can, as soon as I wake up, I check it. As soon as I'm at work, I'm on it all day. Posting memes, reading memes, making fun of Jay, whatever. You can find me on Twitch as TallSharkandHandsome. You can find me on Eternal as TallSharkandHandsome plus 4960. Find me on Reddit as TallSharkandHandsome and on Twitter as @SharkandTall because TallSharkandHandsome wouldn't fit. Recently, I've been doing something on Twitter where I'm posting all of my my shark facts and making them kind of funny, and that's been pretty popular so far, but we'll see how that goes. How about you, Jay? Where can they find you?
So you can find me on Bassoon Buffoons or Sharks Discords. I'm very frequent on both those Discords. And sometime in the near future, I'm going to work on my own personal Discord a little bit in case you want to hop in there. It's going to happen. You can find me on Twitch at JayOSU, where I'm actually starting to stream more often. Now, I would like to start picking up Eternal streams again, but lately I've been borrowing like Moto cards from my friends and playing Magic Online. But I just hit, like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I hit affiliate. So coming soon, Bull Cut Emote. On Eternal, I am JayMang plus 8035. On Reddit, JayOSU. You probably found me in the Reddit thread. And then on Twitter, where I never post, is at JayOSU. I keep saying that I eventually would like to post whenever I put these things live, and I always forget.
Yeah, he's not going to.
But I hope you all really enjoyed this podcast and stay average.